FCTV viewers, welcome to another edition of What's Growin On. And I'm still Jayne Spooner, and I'm still a Rice County Master Gardener here in Faribault. And welcome again to another episode. I saw a clip today on a talk show that I watched about, and I have to laugh because it was kind of a compilation of a bunch of newscasts that Jimmy Kimmel had put together, and he makes fun of TV shows. And he pulled together all these newscasters, and they go, "Oh, I can't believe it's May. Oh, I can't believe it's May." So I'm not going to say I can't believe it's May, but I'm going to talk about instead, how about No Mow May, which, well, it is a thing, but it's not really a thing around here. So let's first of all talk about what No Mow May is. No Mow May started actually in European countries. You know, in Europe, if you ever watched like any type of House Hunters International or something, you know, these homes that they have, they're a little bit smaller and they don't have the big expanses of the green grass that we here in the United States love and cherish. And what they did was they incorporated a program during the month of May not to actually go out and mow your lawn. And it was their thought, by not mowing their lawn, that it would be a nice habitat for bees to come in for pollination, and that first drink of nectar as they're coming out of their hibernation stages in order to, you know, create their honey and pollinate all of our plants coming into bloom in the early spring and into the summer. Well, it finally did come to the United States, and it's kind of been met with limited success. Here in Faribault, we did not adopt it. We'll talk about, you know, some other options. I know the city of Northfield actually adopted it last year, but since then they too this year have scaled it back, and rather doing No Mow May, they're doing Mow Less May. And we'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages, and mostly the disadvantages about what No Mow May is. So one of the reasons that they think that No Mow May is great, because the very first flower that comes into your yards basically in the spring is actually dandelions here. But did you know that dandelions are not native to North America? Just like a lot of things, they were brought over, either their seeds were attached to something that was brought over, or they were brought over thinking it would be something special. Now, from personal experience, the first thing that I had blooming in my yard this year was actually my 2 apricot trees. And while I know that I'm sure they're probably native because they were bred, or, you know, they were developed by the University of Minnesota, but the trees were just covered with honeybees and red admiral butterflies. Dandelions actually are not native, and we have about 50 native species of bees in the United States. And so they're looking actually for native flowers and plants in order to do their pollination, and dandelions are not native to us. They're going to prefer, bees are going to prefer our native pollen of the trees and flowers that we have here in the United States. So let's talk about some of the disadvantages about No Mow May. And you know, people are kind of going back to that natural lawn. They want to create their pollinator gardens because that is a big push. And if, you know, I'm sure the majority of my listeners here and viewers know that without honeybees, we don't have food, because bees in our environment pollinate everything from apples to zinnias, and without honeybees and bees altogether, we wouldn't have food, because we need to have that pollination in order for fruits to grow and for flowers to continue blooming. So what happens when you don't mow your lawn for the whole month of May? Well, as your grass gets taller, basically your root system is right at the ground level. So as your grass grows taller, it's going to become shaded, that root system at the bottom. And so the sun is not going to actually get down far enough to that root system to create that photosynthesis in order to create that stronger root structure. Now these tall grasses too, eventually in a month, you're going to have to cut it. And if we continue to have the rains that we are like now, you could have 8 to 10 inches of grass. And when you mow it, you better bring in a farmer to bale it. And also the other problem that's going to happen is with that tall grass, you know, the grass needs to dry out a little bit in between dews and rains and everything. So basically with it being as tall as it is, it can actually create fungus and mold problems within your turf grass. Now, the other disadvantage to having that tall grass, how many of you have dogs out there? Now, if you've got grass that's 8 to 10 inches tall and you let your dog out, and if it's a big dog, they can probably navigate that tall grass. But if you've got some little tiny little pooch that probably fits in your purse, they're going to look out there and think they're going into a jungle, and they're going to wonder where they're going to find a spot to do their business. So that's going to be another disadvantage to you. So, and really another disadvantage is how many of you have kids? How many of you have grandkids? And at this time of year, you want your kids to get outside and play. And with that tall grass, it might cause some problems and just be kind of not fun for them to play in, especially with their toys. So what's a solution for your yard if you really want to invite pollinators to your yard rather than leaving your grass grow? Well, there is a new way to do it, and it's called planting a bee lawn in your yard. And bee lawns are basically a type of grass mixed with turf grasses and fine fescues and some low-growing flowers, which is actually mowable, but yet it attracts pollinators. The flowers of the bee lawn will help provide nectar and pollen for pollinators coming into your yard, and it's going to be environmentally friendly because of it's a low input method of putting it in, and it generally is going to use less fertilizer. And really, you don't want to put pesticides on it. So you're not going to be using any pesticides because they're going to, impede with your pollinators. And bee lawns are nice because they're short, so they can still be used recreationally like a regular lawn. And a bee lawn can actually attract those 50 species of native bees that we have around the area. Now the bee lawn, it's going, like I said, it's going to be low growing, and so it's going to be adapted to mowing. So you can basically mow over it, to a certain length. Because the flowers that come out in the bee lawn, they're going to be low growing, and that's what you really want. You want those flowers for that nectar, for bees to pollinate. And also it's going to be tolerant to foot traffic, so you're not going to have to worry about stomping it down. It's going to bounce back. It's going to be resilient. And it's going to be moderately competitive, so they can hold their own once you plant the area, so turf grass doesn't come in and take it over and that you have to replant over and over. And the fact of the matter is, just like your turf grass, these bee lawns also become perennial, so once you get it established, it's going to continue to grow. So what are the plants that actually are put into a bee lawn? So first of all, it's going to be a mixture of several different things, and it's going to be a mixture of turf grasses, and you can go for a strong creeping red fescue, a slender creeping red fescue, a chewings fescue, hard fescue, or a sheep fescue. And the flowers that you kind of want to mix in there for bee lawns is a Dutch white clover, self-heal, or creeping thyme. Now there are other flowers that you can add to it, which is ground plum, lance leaf, or calico American aster. Now the nice thing about this is because these are now becoming so popular in the landscape industry that there are companies that are actually creating a type of a mixture that you can go out and sprinkle. So all those seeds for those turf grasses and those flowers are going to be incorporated into the mixture, so you're not having to buy each one separately and making the correct ratio of turf and flower seeds in that mixture to throw out in your lawn. So it's going to be open the bag and sprinkle it and away you go. And I know that Paisley Gardens over in Northfield carries it. There's Albert Lee Seed House down in Albert Lee that carries it. And if you do a Google search or go to the University of Minnesota website, I know there's a more comprehensive list of places that you can actually do it, or you can actually order it online. So now, when you decide you want to plant your bee lawn, just like I say anything, it's location, 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 and also soil test. So what I would do, once you decide to put that bee lawn in, is send your soil sample up to the University of Minnesota Soil Testing Lab. And I know I've talked about it in the past, but that's going to make a huge difference. And just tell them that on that sheet, when you send in that soil sample, that's what you want to do, is that you're going to be putting in a bee lawn. And it will tell you the right nutrients to apply to that area in order to get your bee lawn going. Now, location is another aspect to really look at, because you want to make sure it's in a sunny to part sun location. They really don't do well in shade. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and dig up your whole lawn to do this. You can just do even so much as a 5x5 plot in your yard, somewhere in your yard where it gets enough sun, just to have an area for pollinators to congregate and do their pollination. But you also want to make sure it's a lower traffic area. But you can walk on it, but you just don't want to have a lot of heavy traffic. Another good place is if you have a sloped area in your yard that you really don't use for much, and people aren't walking around it. So that's kind of a nice way. It establishes some nice grass there. And now also take your neighbors into consideration, because you might have a neighbor that wants a pristine lawn that looks green in here. Now you've got kind of a mixture of your grass, your fescue grass, but what's going to probably stand out is some of the flowers in it, like the white clover, and he might not appreciate it. But I think if you tell him what you're doing, that you want to do some stuff for your pollinators, but you're doing this, it's low growing, it's not going to get long and unsightly like some people do, but explain to him what you're going on, what's going on. And like I said, if you can go grass there, you can grow a bee lawn there. Now is a great time to start, because things are just starting to come into place. Trees are starting to bud out. You're starting to take stock of your lawn. So is there a spot in your yard that maybe is not growing well, and you think, well, how about if I put that there? So spring's a great time to do it. And as it gets established, you're going to get your flowers right away in order to help that pollination process throughout the whole summer. Another great time to plant a bee lawn is actually late fall. And that's actually the best option, but if it's something that you really want to get motivated on and do now, you can do that as well. Now, if you do it in the late fall, now this is called dormant seeding, and this is actually a great time for turf grasses as well if you're seeding. So that's always been, if you listen to any garden podcasts or see Bobby Jensen on TV, he says fall is a great time to spread grass seed out there, and just the snow kind of keeps it compact, and then as it melts, it waters that in the spring. So now there's a couple of different ways that you can plant your bee lawn, and that's overseeding or renovating the area. So let's say you have a patch of grass and you've selected a patch of grass. You don't need to really dig that up, but you can actually spread in the early spring. You can spread some of that bee lawn mixture within it, and some of those flowers especially will start to establish themselves and burst forth and invite the bees in for pollination. And actually just overseeding an area really is probably the easiest way to do it. Not as much back-breaking work. You just kind of select off an area. You want to rope it off so you're not walking on it and just having the seed stick to your feet or whatever, and you can just sprinkle that seed there and just kind of water it in. Now, if you renovate, that's going to take a little bit more work, but actually it's to your advantage, because if you have, an area of your yard that's kind of looking a little rough and has some unsightly weeds, just go in there and clean out those weeds that aren't good for pollinators. Work up the yard a little bit, sprinkle that seed in there and get it watered in. Or you have an area that really needs to just be kind of scraped of its lawn or whatever, just to kind of even it out. I know we have certain spots in our yard that's getting kind of bumpy, so it makes it a little uncomfortable to walk across the yard, but that's another area for you that you can use to do some renovation. So if you're going to do the lawn renovation method, a couple of tips to get those weeds out of there, and one of them is actually called solarization. So let's say you have a patch of unsightly weeds and you want to get rid of them. Just take some big hunks of cardboard, lay it down on top of it, and secure it with some bricks or whatever. And especially on hot days, what it's going to do, it's just going to bake those weeds and just kill them off. And then you're going to scrape that out of there and work up the ground a little bit, and then you can get it ready to plant your seeds. You can also do some physical removal of it. If there's not a lot there, just go in with a weed digger and just pull them out and get them thrown out. They do suggest herbicides, but that's really not something that you want to do because herbicides are killing our pollinators, so you really don't want to incorporate that into your method of removal of that area. So now, depending on the size that you're going to do for your bee lawn, let's just say it's a 5x5 area. You don't need to have any special equipment. You're going to get your bag of seed and you're going to find that area, have it marked off, and you're just going to hand sprinkle it by seed. And you want to take a look and measure it out and see what they actually recommend for the amount that you spread per square inch. You can actually, if you want to do a larger area and you don't want to, be throwing the seed out there and you want a little bit more even distribution of that seed, you can actually apply it with a drop spreader. And that will have the instructions on the back as far as the amount of seed that you put per square foot. Now, once you get that seed spread out in the area that you want, you're going to lightly rake it into the area just to kind of get it to adhere to the dirt there. And that's especially when you're in doing it in the spring. And then you're going to, like I said, mark it off and spray it in, because you don't want anybody to walk over it, because all it's going to do is get to your shoes and you're not going to, it's going to just remove it from the area and not grow. And then when you're spring seeding especially, you want to make sure you get that watered in. Just like you're planting grass seed in the spring or new sod, you're going to want to keep that evenly watered for itself to get itself established in your yard. So now you get all of your seed spread and it's starting to sprout. How are you going to maintain it? Just maintain it as you would your regular yard. Once you've established and it's well established in your yard, you can remove that barrier so you can just mow it just like the rest of your lawn. So you can just incorporate it into your regular mowing each week or every 2 weeks, depending on the growth of your grass. When you're spring seeding, just like I said, as you would new seed, if you're just using a regular grass seed, you're just going to water it as needed because you want to get that established in your lawn. You can add a little fertilizer along with it. You might have to do some weeding there if you're seeing some undesirables, but eventually once that seed really sets and takes hold of it, you're not going to have too much problem with undesirable weeds coming into that area. Because like I said, it's not an invasive seed mixture, but it's going to be aggressive enough to just stay established in your yard. So now if you want more information that I'm able to give you here in this time frame and look at some pictures and stuff, there's a couple of good resources for you to go to. And one is the University of Minnesota Bee Lab website. And anything you want to know about bees is there. And we're very fortunate to have this facility. It is up on at the Arboretum in the Chaska-Chanhassen area. I've actually been up there several years ago with a group for a team day. So we got all the 411 on bees and what's going on with pollination, and we even took a class on honey. We did a cooking class utilizing honey that's actually been collected up there at the campus. Another place and another article that's really more in depth as to what I'm giving you here is go to the University of Minnesota Extension website, and there is an article in there called Planting and Maintaining a Bee Lawn, and it will give you all the specifics of what you need, and it will provide you links of where to go to find your seed and how to properly care for it and what to look for and what not to do. So certainly more comprehensive than what I can give you here in this small spot. So a great opportunity for you to welcome pollinators in your yard and keep your lawn somewhat nicely manicured, but still incorporating some pollinators in your yard to bring in those pollinators to help pollinate, so we have our food and we have our flowers, and just to make things beautiful in our yard. And so with that, I'm signing out for another episode. Have a great spring, and we'll see you soon, and happy digging.